This is the coolest new tool in chassis fabrication. They're called the Prototractor. RevPrep's the first US distributor for them, and they allow you to quickly and easily measure all your bends, prototype them using PVC pipe, super cheap, and then it's very easy to measure rotation in between bends, and then turn your prototype from plastic into metal with no waste on the first try. And the accuracy is unbelievable. Going from a concept to a good fitting piece of bent tubing has never been easier. With the Prototractors, you can just adjust your angles, you read them off, it'll tell you how much tubing is in your bend, or in this case pipe if you're prototyping using pipe like they're intended to be used. And then you can just cut the pipe with a handheld cutter, get your correct lengths using a tape measure. So let's do an example on a full B-pillar. I want to show you guys how easy this is and how accurate it fits. So first you're going to cut these to fit your car using, of course, a cutter. You can see Brandon doing that now. This part's actually pretty fun. You get to build the cage kind of like Tinker Toys or Legos out of plastic, and this is cheap and accurately shows you exactly what you're going to get in tube. These bits are called mag rings. You can twist these to tune how close the pipe is to your car, setting gaps. We'll go into why you would do that and when later in the video. First shot is hitting the ceiling. That round bar simulates the outside of the bend, so we're just going to trim to fit. You can cut as many times as you want, which is nice. Now we're going to cut our right side to match our left. That way it stays symmetrical. Now that we have the 4 bends mocked up, we can just measure between the top 2 and get our top bar length. Now that you have the full PVC bar in place, you can just go through and inspect all your gaps, your fitment, your angles, make sure you're happy with how this is going to look if it was bent in tube. You can make any adjustments needed, and now's a good time to verify that your angles and cut lengths are all symmetrical if that's your goal. And what we're going to do is work from the center out. You can do this also from one end all the way around to the other if you prefer that. I've always worked center out to keep things symmetrical, so that's the way we're going to continue to do it. So we got this fitting really nice. These have mag rings, which allow you to stick the whole thing in so that it doesn't fall while you're working, and it helps you set gaps. We'll show you guys a lot more about setting those gaps and how you can tune them by turning the mag rings closer to the end of the video. So this centerpiece, if we just measure it with a tape measure, from end to end, we get 26 3/4 of an inch. And again, we're going to go from center line. So the first thing I'm going to do is divide that in half. That's 13 3/8 of an inch. That takes us to the end where the Prototractor junctions to the PVC pipe. We're going to add 3/4 of an inch there to get to the actual point where it joins the bend, and the reason for that is pretty clear once you get one of these in your hands. Where they junction at each end, there's 3/4 of an inch. So as we walk our way down this tube all the way to the end to get our bend start locations and our cut lengths, which is what we need for layout to get an accurate bent piece of tubing, we're going to always be adding 3/4 of an inch every single time we junction a piece of PVC. Once we add that 3/4 of an inch for the PVC pipe junction to the Prototractor, we get 14 1/8 inches. So that's from center line to the start of bend number 1. So that's the first thing we put in our tube after we mark center line, which will be half of our cut length. We'll work our way to the cut length by the end here. So we're going to put that. Bend 1 is 74 degrees as indicated on the Prototractor. So that's going to be the first actual bend start location. We're going to lay it on our tube. That'll go to the right and to the left of center line so we can get the top corner bends. Those are the bends that you tune for overall width if you end up making any mistakes. We've gone over that before in our other B-pillar bending video that did not use Prototractors. So the length of the bend is the next thing we're going to add up because we're going to lay all this out flat. So we need to know the length taken up by this bend. There's a very accurate formula printed on this, but it's about 0.105 inches per degree. So 74 degrees times that number gives us 7 3/4 inches. That's the amount of tubing that's going to be inside of this bend. Straight tubing that's going to make the bend. We add that number to our 14 1/8, 3/4 of an inch for the offset for the next piece of PVC, which is 14 inches long, so we add 14 inches, and then 3/4 of an inch for the last junction in the second piece of tubing, and that's going to give us 37 3/8 of an inch from the center line to where bend number 2 starts. And of course, reading off the degrees, bend number 2 is a 14-degree bend, so we're going to mark out that bend start and the bend angle, and from that we will get a piece that exactly fits this. We just don't know how long to cut it. So we're just going to walk the rest of the way down the tube, add up the numbers, 3/4 of an inch for the next junction offset, and then 23 inches was the length of our bottom leg. When we add up all those numbers from center line to the end, we get 62.595 inches. I'm sure we can round that. To get an accurate cut length, we're going to double that. It ends up being 125.19 inches. That is 2/1000ths of an inch away from 125 3/16, which happens to be a number we can find easily on a tape measure. So we're going to do that. We'll cut the piece of tube to 125 3/16 inches, and then we're going to go over our center line amount, which is 62.59 inches. That's going to give us the exact center of the tubing. We're going to lay out our bend start locations. The next thing we're going to do after that is we're going to put little hash marks, just little crosses through the length of the bends. We've been writing down all these numbers as we've been going, so we're just going to take them from our layout sheet and write them on the tube. The reason why that helps when you take those numbers and you actually write them on the tubing is when you're bending, that's going to be the section that is exactly in the bend. So if your bend starts before that or finishes after that, etc., you'll know immediately you've made a mistake and you can stop investing time in that piece. The other thing we're going to do, and this is specific to Rogue Fab tools, is we're going to do bend offsets. That's where, from the bend, you can put the clamp blocks on your bender about 5 inches back. It varies based on what centerline radius die you're using, and it's all at Bending 101 on our webpage. You can put all those clamp blocks on the tubing while it's straight, which helps you keep your bends in plane, and there's some other benefits as well. If you don't want to do that on the Rogue Fab M600 line, you can just take that bend start line that you marked on the tube and just put it through the windows that are visible on your machine, and as long as you can see that line in the windows, that's where your bend's going to start. So you don't have to use clamp block offsets even with the Rogue Fab tooling. And if you're using this for anyone else's machinery, like some of the guys we compete with or any other tube bender you've got or one you've made, this stuff all still works, and you're just going to take those bend start locations and line it up in your machine the way you normally would, hit your bend angles, and it's going to fit exactly the same. Which brings me to my next point. One thing you should be doing is hitting the button down here and subscribing to our channel. We do a lot of content like this where we teach you guys how to fabricate, and it's not always even specific to our tools. We're going to help you guys make more accurate parts that fit better, that are safer, and are going to save you a lot of time, and in some cases like this, money while you're building. So hit that subscribe button, check the bell to enable notifications. That's going to allow you to be the first person back here when we find incredible new tools like Prototractors. And also, we are doing this right now as a temporary B-pillar. Our final is going to be built out of Docal R8, which is kind of like it's similar to chromoly. So we'll be TIG welding that whole cage and doing it as part of this extreme budget build, 400 horsepower, twin turbo, giant brakes, big tires, wide body. You won't want to miss that whole series of videos. Now, let's get into building this in metal and doing a fit check and some tips and tricks. Put the PVC and the metal in for a test fit. I think they're going to be pretty close. I'm excited to see what this looks like. Oh man, that is
perfect.
Unbelievable. That's crazy. That fit up is amazing. So, I have a dirty little camera secret for you guys. Here at Rogue Fab, we got these tools and I went and used them in an evening without filming, and just because I wanted to see what they did before we figured it out, see if there's any tweaks, any offsets we had to do for tube stretch or anything else. The secret is, this is from that first take. This is actually the first piece I ever built with Prototractors. And we didn't cut it long and trim it to fit. It's actually exact size that I cut first try. So the proof in the process is a complete stranger to these tools who'd never handled one before made a 4-bend part that came out accurate enough you'd have to have instrumentation to measure the difference between them. I mean, it came out dead on. So if you've been on the fence about getting new measurement tools for building cages, time to jump off the fence. These are the ones. Another tip, since you guys are going to be telescoping these things periodically, this pipe fits pretty stiff, but if you squeeze it, it makes them really easy to move. That's because, of course, they're being pinched this direction, not this direction. So when you want to move them, you just give them a squeeze, and that makes them much, much easier to move. Let's pretend like this tube, you might remember we did it 14 inches. Let's pretend like we had cut it to 13.5 and later decided it's not tall enough. We can just create a gap here. Looks like I've got a little bit more gap than what I described, but there we go. Now it's stuck on there. When you measure this piece of pipe, do not measure it from where you normally would. Just go up to where the pipe would stop and measure it then. So if I'd cut this to like 13.25, I can use this telescoping feature on the Prototractor where it fits nice and tight. You can just slide the pipe down to the length you should have cut it to, and you don't have to recut a new piece. You can just slide it down, fine-tune your length that way. On a similar note, if you're having trouble getting the PVC over the edge of it, you can twist it, and it will actually remove a whole bunch of plastic, and then they'll slip on a lot easier. So if you're struggling really hard, just give them some twists. These are made out of stainless. Of course, now it's tight. These are made out of stainless steel. Every metal piece on it that is laser cut is stainless, so they can handle quite a bit of abrasion and abuse, and you won't be rubbing any finish off because they're not zinc plated. So you can just twist them inside the PVC, and it'll help kind of remount some of those burrs, rough ends, or sizing variations. Man, I'm thrilled with how close that fit between the metal and the prototype out of PVC. I want to show you guys exactly how you can do this in that exact same race car. We're going to do an A-pillar. I'm sitting here by my rock crawler because I wanted to show you guys a picture. I actually already did this to evaluate for a customer who was picking some of these up, how you can can use the exact same tools, the Prototractor and the mag ring, to do an A-pillar. So that's where you go from the floor up to the corner where the hinge and windshield is, and then of course along the windshield and along the roof. Problem is, that first and second bend are not coplanar. So if you see in this picture, we actually did the exact same layout we're going to do in the race car on an A-pillar, but we did it on this rock crawler, and you can do it exactly the same way. And if you can't ever get it close enough to the body, you can just space it out. So you can put a block on two different parts of the body, same size block up here, space the whole thing out, and then you can do things like a B-pillar that wraps around the car, and you can do those off-road outside cages if you're doing an XO, and you can still measure them with the same tools. So let's get back in the race car. I want to show you guys how easy it is to lay an A-pillar with rotation between the bends using Prototractors in a race car. You already recording?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I mean, we can try to do this and then shoot it, or we can just like wing it and just throw it together.
I'll just do it. We got B-roll of us cutting this and stuff, so then it is quite a bit high because that has to be like that. Mm-hmm. So we need to go down about that much.
Okay. So
you can always telescope.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah.
You guys real close.
Yeah, we're still hitting this thing. I say let's do one more inch off this. There we go.
And then I'm just gonna basically put this where I want it up here. This is gonna basically go like right there. So that one's a little too short.
Mm-hmm. What up, Drew?
Look at this real quick. Look too busy with the USA logo and the 5X and everything? Or?
No, I like it.
That's good.
Okay, cool.
That's great. Yeah, see, there we go.
Yeah.
We're way close.
All right, let's try this longer piece on here. I just want to put this about where it's going to go up at the top. Looks about right. So.
Was that other piece too short?
Yeah, the other piece was too short. So, yeah, that looks good. I don't think we actually have to cut that one. That's a random coincidence. So, that looks pretty good. And then we're just gonna
make a quick mark down there.
No tape measure required. We're just gonna hit it with a Sharpie. Right there.
Cool. Stick to the window here. A little hard to grab it inside this hole. There it goes. All right,
cool.
We're in. We're in.
All right, that's a dead on fit. So we got to mark our center line down this tube. So let's pull that one.
Yeah, and I think
out.
I think it's slightly long. I think we can take about a 1/2 inch off of it.
Okay.
Because it's like binding.
Yeah.
I want to get a powered pair of those now so bad.
I know. That's about as crooked as they get.
Yeah, it'll give us the little bit of leeway we need.
Yeah, just have to measure from the right spot and it will be fine. Okay, so getting our line on here. We'll just rotate it to the right spot, but that will be our center line for measuring rotation. And then for visibility's sake, we're gonna probably want it to go
Line it up with this one.
to the inside. Either one doesn't really matter. So we'll line it up right in between the two, just like that. Okay. There you go.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's looking good up here. So if we want this to fit a little bit better, we can pull this out a little bit down here.
Yeah.
And then it'll allow it to come further forward in there. So you got to rotate the tube a little bit on the slug, twist the tube.
Cool.
I didn't have that locked in. Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah, that's what I meant, increasing rotation.
There it goes.
Like
Are we still centered on that one?
That's what I was fixing. We were off a tiny little bit. So.
Cool. Here, you want to throw a mag ring on that one? On the end? It'll hold it up against the roof.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Keep it from falling.
I forgot about that.
You can even put 2 mag rings on it if you want. Give it some extra.
Sure. We'll make it stuck on there.
Some extra holding force. I love those things.
Yeah. I always consider the A pillar, you know, the part from B pillar down to the floor by the feet of the driver or passenger, to be the most difficult part of a cage to measure. It's because of the rotation between the first and second bend here. So laying these out is really similar to a B pillar. You get your straight lengths, you get your bend angles off your Prototractors. They of course have your little formulae for calculating your bend lengths. And then rotation is the fun part. You guys let me mark that with a Sharpie and a piece of angle iron to get a center line down the tube, and then we mark down here to see how far the rotation is. So we're just going to measure the straight distances of all the pipe for our tube, label them, and then when we take it apart, that's when we're going to measure our rotation. So you've probably noticed there's a little feature on the Prototractors. It's on every single one of them. And it is there just to measure the rotation between bends. So you put one of them on 0, just like that. And it looks like we're at about 12.5 degrees of rotation. But using this little scale right here in the circular cutout, you can measure your rotation between bends using lines you scribe on the tube. And of course, you don't have to measure from 0. You can measure from 50 to 62. You're going to still get 12 no matter how you do it. So that is how you tell, after bend 1, how much you rotate for bend 2.